Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this alumni spotlight. We will get going here in just a minute, but I want to give folks time to join and before we get fully started. So for those who are here, if you haven't joined the live storm before, there are two sections down on your bottom right. There's a chat section. Please jump in. I see Jasmine knows what to do. Jump in and say hi. Tell us where you're from, what part of the academy you're in. Are you in foundations, phase 1, phase 2? Would love to hear those things from you. And then as we go along, I have some questions to get us going, but I would absolutely love to hear from you all first. So there is a second tab for questions. Please put your questions in there. That's what I will be moderating and watching for as we go. Questions that go in the chat section may get lost. So yeah, please jump in and say hi. Let us know where you're joining in from. I'm seeing folks from all over, which is super great. And we'll get started here in just a second. But I'm Jessica Campbell. I'm the program manager for career services here at Designlab, and I will be your facilitator for this session.
Hi, everybody. Jasmine was in a lot of my group crits, so nice to see Jasmine.
You're recognizing these names. Yeah. That's good. You have a following. All right, I'm seeing the numbers for people joining slow down, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Thank you again, everybody. Please continue to throw your names in there. Something fun that folks like to do too is if you want to connect, throw your LinkedIns in. You're welcome to do that or not do that if you would like. Again, if you have questions, you have questions already, please start throwing those in the questions tab, not in the chat. So I have with me today Joyce Isleta, who is a Designlab alum and a group crit facilitator. As we mentioned, some of you may already know them from her sessions here at Designlab. But she's here to talk to us about her journey through UX Academy and really crucially, something that she recognized, which is that networking and imposter syndrome piece. So we really want to talk about those things with y'all today. It's kind of like our high level topic, but Joyce ended up finding an internship on Facebook and landed her first job by networking and by utilizing ADP List. So we are very excited to talk to you about your journey, Joyce. I'm going to kick it off with one question, which is, tell us a little bit more. Give us a little bit of a deep dive. What brought you to UX?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Joyce. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. I started in UX on COVID year, so 2020. I actually started, I did sales for about 5-6 years before that. And of course, during a pandemic, I can't be door knocking and visiting businesses. And so it was a really good opportunity for me to decide to finally learn and shift it to something that I've actually been interested in a while. One of my OD roommates was a UX designer, so shout out to Philip. And he didn't really tell me a lot about this job, but I knew that he was kind of doing graphic design and website design. And so I was able to find Designlab and take this course. Really excited with my long journey with them and continuous journey with them as a group facilitator. And I graduated in 2021 out in January. And I was pretty lucky that the fall Christmas time period, you kind of have a lot more breaks. And so I would say during that time period, I really pushed myself to network a lot, take on other opportunities and do extra work. So I'll try to go into some of those things that I thought were really helpful and positioned me to be able to get a job. Even before I really finished Designlab, I didn't have the opportunity to go through career services because I was lucky enough to get a job before that. But I actually regret not taking the time to do it still, just because the lessons that you can have there could still push me with any other job application experience. But I'm sure that experience is great for a lot of people too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do already have a question in the queue here. And I think it kind of tees us up pretty well to talk about the strategies you had. So You mentioned that you landed a job right away. So this question is, how hard was it for you to land a job after completing the program? They're seeing lots of talk on Reddit about how the industry is impacted with junior designers, and that takes a lot of work outside of the program to land a job. So I'm curious, your experience getting into this was different than perhaps some other folks who are graduating and not having that job right away.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, so I think with my experience, even while I was in the course, I mean, I think I'm definitely lucky where I was in the position where I full on quit my job and it didn't affect me. Like, obviously I had like savings, I live with my parents, and I didn't financially need a job while I was in the course. And so that helped me in the fact that I could fully focus on the course. And even on top of that, be willing to take a side job. So that internship that I was able to pick up, able to do those things without having a full-time job. And I know that that's really difficult, but I think in general, if you really want a full-time job in UX, a big distinguishing factor is going to have real world experience. And I think I knew in my mind that if I'm going to try to get that real world experience, I probably have to also get it for free. Like, I have to take on some work that I'm not going to get paid for right away, but that's going to separate me when I do really apply for some of these bigger companies. That's going to give me a full-time role. So seeking out other positions and jobs, I think, is really helpful to make that difference and make it so that when you really need to land a full-time job, when it comes to finishing the full course, you're prepared for it, or people view you a lot differently as opposed to someone that just only did the bootcamp course. And so I was on a lot of like Facebook groups. And so I think I heard that in the description, it sounds also like I got an internship at Facebook, but it's actually that I got an internship off of Facebook.
That's my bad, everybody. That's my bad.
I think a lot of people might have read that in that way. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, I did not get an internship as like a non-graduated student. But I got an internship from someone. It was actually a part-time job, but I was doing most of their like just social media graphic design. But I was working underneath a UX designer that was able to like throw me a bone and let me have like a side project that I was able to put as a case study. And so even just seeking out like, hey, like they were saying like, hey, we kind of need a graphic design UI designer. And for me to just take the time to do that role, like it was very low effort, still gave me experience, still gave me that network. And the other big thing, other than like, yes, having that as a resume line, is to have that person be a person that can vouch for me, like someone that could recommend me that's already in the field. I think is even a bigger distinguisher of like my skill, talent, or like ability, as opposed to it being like, yes, she's a UX designer already.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that you wanted to touch on, right? Is this idea of imposter syndrome, right? So I'd love for you to dive in a little bit more on that concept and how you approached that, how you overcame that, because like you said, we have to put ourselves out there. We have to try these projects. We have to make ourselves available, right, in order to get experience. And I'm lumping myself in because we all need to do that if we're trying to make a career change. So what were some of your tactics for overcoming potential imposter syndrome as you were making a change into UX?
Yeah, I think before I was actually within like the UX field had like a full-time position, I think for me is like trying to be as knowledgeable as possible. Like I know I'm not going to learn everything, but if I can learn enough where I feel confident and actually like can strategize saying, hey, I'm keeping up with the common trends because I know that I'm doing something to really like learn. That helps in itself. I do want to share a few resources. Let me pull this up real quick while I reference this. Let's see.
That's great. Joyce made a lovely slide for you also. You can
Thanks,
take some notes, get out your pen and paper.
So the two things that I wanted to pull up that, again, when I was lucky enough where I had that whole December month, obviously I was still in the course, but I felt like I had a little bit of extra time to do more. The thing that I really leaned on was Behance's creative challenges. So that's actually with Adobe and Adobe XD. I know a lot of people are like, no, Adobe took Figma, but like the beauty of Adobe is the way that they teach things for their products. At least that's one of the things I really valued. So Behance would have these creative challenges, and I like pushed myself to do it because it was like a month worth or 15 days worth of challenges. And it was so cool because they would have like an experienced designer do a webinar, and then they would provide the design file along with it. And you didn't have to like step by step follow what they did. It could be something like how to do a location pin and make a scrollable map, and you can make it into whatever you want. And like, I don't think I would say I was doing it to learn how to do that visual design. I was more so doing it to push myself of like, all right, commit to this, and like almost like doing whiteboard challenges every day. Like it was pushing myself to have like the grit to like learn on the spot, that when I knew that I was doing that, I just felt more confident about talking to people that I could do that. And to me, that was a separator. That was something that was making me feel like I know I'm strong at UX design because I can do this, even if it wasn't perfect. Like that's like mostly UI design, but it was like, I'm gonna make myself capable or feel capable to do this so that when I'm put in front of someone to talk about it, I know I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I wanted to point out on this is, even now being an experienced designer or someone that's working on a daily basis, I feel like you can forget the foundations a lot, or like little things, because you're not touching certain things on a regular basis. That I found the resource UXL, and I again, these are kind of more like supplemental education, right? I think a big thing that helps you get a job is to show that outside of what's just asked of you, how can you do more? And so on top of Designlab, I think that these are kind of good extra things, because Designlab is really good for like theory and putting together your portfolio, but sometimes you just need a little bit more help. And UXL was like, it's a very gamified UX like teaching method. Like they give you little quizzes, you learn just best practices about things, and they reference like Nielsen Norman and like all the legit places that you would want to kind of learn how to do like a form or how to do a search bar, you know, some of those things that I can forget, like, oh wait, how do I do this again? That has been helping me keep that muscle sharp, I would say. So I recommend that too as like an extra way of looking at it.
And what I'm hearing, and I there is a question over here that I think leads really well into what you're just saying, but part of the tactic for imposter syndrome is just to continue to build that muscle, right? Seek that out and hone in your design skill, and know that you have the capability to do it because you can speak on it and you've practiced it. And it's not just relying on what you've learned here in Designlab as your sole, that's it, I've learned UX. Which I don't think anybody is like hopefully pushing or making anyone feel that way, because it's a learning journey. And we do have a question from Olga, which is, I think you've alluded to, but just to specifically answer this, how much of UI design do you do in contrast to UX? Are you doing any graphic and design branding as well within your current work?
I think it depends on what kind of position you take on, because some people take on like strict UI roles and some people can be a very UX generalist. And I'm lucky that I have a very generalist role. Like I've been able to take on a lot of research as well. You know, user flows, wire flows, like all of those come into UX before you do the UI. So UI is part of my favorite thing about it. So I'm lucky where I am doing a lot of those screens too. So but honestly, that tends to be like the smallest portion. It can take really long, but like all the build up to getting to when you actually need to make the screens can take a lot more time. And I weirdly have done like a little bit of like marketing work for us recently, and that typically isn't the main thing, but it can happen every once in a while.
Yeah, I would say you often see some of the graphic and branding work if you already have a graphic design background as you're coming into a role, or if it's a very small team, for sure. And then we've got a nice question here from Tina on the topic of finding jobs. On LinkedIn, I've only come across entry-level UX jobs that require a minimum of 3 years experience. How does that work for someone with non-design background and a complete beginner out of boot camp? Any thoughts on that piece?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I feel like you, as also someone in career service, maybe you can speak to this. That
I'm happy to jump in on this one too.
I don't want to say like the years of experience is a lie, but in reality, like if you can meet with a hiring manager or a manager and show them your work and they're actually impressed by you and the way that you can speak to UX, they're not going to care how many years you really have behind you. And I think a lot of the people that, you make a good portfolio out of boot camp, they can see that you're going to be able to create quality work that rather they don't have that level of work already in their team, or they're needing somebody else with that level of work to join their team. So the problem more so that I hear from this is that you're thinking the entry level is just on LinkedIn and like job postings. And I think that leans into the other part of my resources, that you should really be networking to find a job posting, as opposed to thinking that it's going to come from that.
And I'd like to stem off of that. I'll just chime in and say, yes, I agree. I mean, 3 years usually as like a recruiter means somewhere around 1 to 3. What 3 years indicates is that it's an entry level job, and don't stress too much about years necessarily. What 3 is trying to indicate is entry level. What you're trying to understand from a job description is what seniority are they looking for. I actually see a lot of job descriptions that are taking years off entirely. But Joyce brings us to a good point, which is what I wanted to tee you up for, which is getting jobs is about networking. So talk to us a little bit about your experience with that and creating those connections.
Yeah, I think you would be surprised, and it seems hurtful to hear, that majority of jobs are gonna be filled before they even hit LinkedIn. Like, they are probably really desperate if they're actually posting that on LinkedIn, because in reality, if someone knows someone instead, if they can interview ahead of time just strictly through them, that's gonna be a better fit more than likely, because they're vouched for. So the first job that I got without any like official experience other than that small UI like internship gig, I got off ADP list. So that's a really great networking tool. You can schedule meetings with almost anyone at any level. Like, there's directors on there. And so I looked for people at companies that I was interested in working in. I picked places that were local because at the time, early COVID, like I thought, we could just be going back straight to the office, which luckily is not the case. But if you network remotely with people that you think, you might want to work with or might want to work at their company, you don't get on those calls obviously straight up asking like, hey, do you have a job for me? But come prepared with questions about their company, because that's really intentionally what I did, is I wanted to learn what it was like to work there. And one of my key questions is always, what are you looking for in a designer? Like, what would you like to have on your team? And sometimes it comes off like, what do you need on your team right now? And so I was lucky where the director heard that and said, oh, we're actually looking for like a visual interaction designer. Like, we have a position open. And I said, okay, can I apply for that position? And he said, yeah, like, let me set you up. This is the recruiter that you need. I was like, okay, well, I have you on the call right now. Can I show you my portfolio? And so I just amped myself up to be able to like really prove myself in that little amount of time that I had in front of him. And he respected that. He respected that I was like a go-getter, that I even set up the meeting at all on ADP list with him. And the recruiter that I set up with, honestly, is now at this point like one of the best resources that I have, because when I decided not to work at that company anymore, they were able to work with me in order to get another position.
Yeah, networking isn't always necessarily and I don't know if you felt this as well, but it sounds like you did right there at the end. But once you have a connection with a person, even if they can't help you with their particular company, if they know somebody, they're far more likely to recommend you to that person. Like you said, the role is already filled before it gets posted, because somebody knows somebody knows somebody. And we have a question that's, I know it's emphasized to network to help you land a job. Do you feel like networking is the only way of breaking into the field to get a job? Do you feel like if we get real world experience and apply for a job, that also helps us land a job even more if we don't have a chance to network as much? So essentially, is networking the only way? Yes or no? And like, potentially, I would even look at this question and say, where are the opportunities to network?
Right.
Maybe that we don't think of.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, of course, it's not the only way because you can be lucky enough to apply for a job and look amazing on a resume, or a hiring manager can click on your portfolio and, think that you're worth putting through to the rest of the process. But that way is actually way harder than people think. Like, that is, if you just submit your stuff in, like, the chances of it really getting pushed through over someone that might have networked to get in that job is way lower. And so I think being able to have real world experience on your resume will also push you further faster. One of the other resources I put on this, and in general, I'm sure there's like 100 others of places where you can get like quick internships or free jobs, that you are going to help with someone on. But I literally have 2 apprenticeships going on right now off of Flick, which is like a female leaders, female founders empowerment sort of company. And so I had a profile on there and I don't even check it at all. I get the email when someone says, hey, they want to reach out to me. I've been very lucky where I have 2 different women that are founders of their company or trying to lead something. And I love what they stand for and what they're trying to do. And those opportunities came for me because I just made sure I had a profile out there. So find some of those like sites. Like, I wouldn't recommend like Fiverr, but even though you really could find work on that, I'm sure that there's other sites that you can really post a profile and see what work works, or see if they have listings of jobs that someone needs just help with. And I think that having the opportunity to work with someone, again, those apprenticeships are free. Like, they're definitely, I'm not getting paid to do those on the side. But it's a great thing when, even right now, having a full-time job, to have other opportunities that I'm stretching like other muscles on, like being a little more creative on. You guys will find that when you do get full-time work, it's more than likely less fun than the kind of work that you're doing with no constraints on Designlab. And so to have a different job that could potentially be like with a startup company, you're going to get different work that could be helping amplify your portfolio in a different way, or obviously just helping you grow in a different way. And so I almost always recommend trying to have some sort of other side job or opportunity. So you say yes to things, even if it won't pay you right away, because it could lead you to the connection that will pay you better, or not even just about money, but just in general, another opportunity that you can grow more from.
Yeah. And to, come back to this question of like, is networking the only way? Absolutely not. Like, people can get jobs right off of applying and off of having real world experience, or even not having real world experience. Yeah. I think what it comes to is putting yourself out there in many different ways is the ultimate. Finding a new job and changing careers is not just applying, oh, I made my portfolio and I graduated from Designlab. There's a lot that goes into it. And it's looking at resources to upskill yourself and networking and all of those things. We have a question coming in kind of still in this networking vein, which is, can you expand more on what networking means to you and how you went about it? I think this is a really good question because networking can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think in general, it could be just even that first, like, general meeting that you have with people, like an ADP list. They're really like, you just set up one-off meetings, but if you make a connection with them while, asking really pointed questions that show you're interested in what they're doing, and tell them about you so that they are continuously curious about what you're doing, then you kind of just form that bond of like, let's keep supporting each other. Like, even if we just have each other on LinkedIn from then on, like, they'll see if I post something, they'll lift me up about it, that kind of thing, of just like continuing to have that. And then I also think like just being able to come back and like for me on ADP lists, I think I was on that even before I finished my portfolio. So I was making the point to ask them, hey, like, will you, when I'm done with it, will you be willing to meet with me again to take a look at it? And especially because that's a good job where if they do see my portfolio and see that I'm a good candidate, now I'm in their head where they're like, if I do have an opportunity come up, I might think of you. It's not like a tit for tat, like I'm really asking for something, but this is just really what actually ends up playing out. Luckily, when you do have that connection with someone and just show them like, I'm in it, I'm passionate, I want to do this, like, they kind of realize it, they see it, and they're like, okay, how can I help you? I feel like that's great. Like, I like doing that for designers too. If anybody needs to reach out to me for any reason, feel free to, for sure.
I think that's the key word that folks hopefully will take away from this is it's connection. It's and to kind of add my own term into it, it's relationship building, right? It isn't networking isn't I'm going to come to you and ask you for a favor without having ever created any established bond. We're building a friendship, as it were, a professional friendship.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
that
I think,
they do think of you.
yeah, I think that that's the worst way of doing it. And I've had some people reach out to me that was like, I know you know nothing about me, but I'm applying for a job at your workplace. Can you please recommend me? And it's
Right.
like, how would I do that? How can I actually put my name out there and recommend you if I know nothing about you? The other side of it, I didn't mention this when I was talking about recruiters, but I'm lucky where the recruiter that I met really did form a relationship with me. And I think when you come into this job, maybe even some of you that are still students that say product designer on your LinkedIn, you're probably getting hit up by a lot of recruiters. And I've learned from my recruiter that, like, you know, a recruiter's job is to get to know you and actually know, like, where do you want to be? What kind of companies do you want to work at? Like, you know, do you want remote or not? The recruiters that are reaching out to you and kind of cold calling you and like sending you a job without knowing anything about you probably don't want a relationship with you at all. They're probably not thinking about helping you. It's almost like a realtor where they're really just trying to get their commission in.
Right.
And so avoid those kind of realtors. But when you do have a realtor that like bothers to really ask about you and like learn what you can bring to a company, they gain value from knowing you because then they think of you when they have a position come up and they could potentially place you there or recommend you there. It's like having an agent, like an actor, actress, you know, like
Yeah,
they
it
hype
really
you
is.
up, they find you jobs. It's really beautiful, honestly, once you have that for yourself. I
Yeah,
don't know how to get a
absolutely.
recruiter though. Like I was lucky to get one.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Like I don't know if cold calling recruiters works, by the way. So
I wouldn't as a not recruiter actively, but former. And I will say, just to kind of throw a little bit of a bone to recruiters, if they are reaching out to you about a specific job, sometimes that can be your foot in the door to being like, okay, they wanted me for this specific thing, but as long as you, like to your point, have a conversation with them and create that connection point, they can't. They even the ones who build a relationship with you want to get paid off of finding
sure.
something for you. And by knowing you, they're more likely to do that because they're going to find something that works for you. You feel seen. And again, we come back to this word connection. Um, so I want to go back to some of the earlier questions to make sure that we hit those. Um, Marie asks, how soon after did you try to find an internship or part-time role? Did you finish your portfolio first? And I know for you it was a little different than maybe other students. So where were you at when you started looking for internships?
I was looking at internships while I was in the course, and again, it was very side, small gig. So, like to me, it works if it's very minimal, the kind of work that they're having me do. Like I was doing graphic design for them, maybe like 1 or 2 hours a week, and like they gave me one small project to do. So I was able to do that during the course, and then I applied for an actual full-time role prior to graduating because I don't know, I just felt like I was networking. I felt confident enough to talk to people already. And I think that I was showing my portfolio even when it wasn't done. And what was interesting is even with that first job, I think I had like the cover screen of saying, hey, this is my finance project. And they were like, this is a finance company. We want to see that one. So even if it's not done, that it might be okay. But I had to bust my butt to like make sure I had it up within the next meeting. So don't
Yeah.
recommend that part. But in reality, it can be worth at least showing what you think you're going to put on your portfolio on it. It's talking to people. I wouldn't say that you could be, I wouldn't apply if I didn't have at least 2 case studies, like to actual full-time jobs. I probably wouldn't apply until I had at least 2 case studies, but I liked getting feedback. Like you can get feedback on 1 case study, like when you're just networking and meeting people.
Yeah. And so we have a question actually about kind of that confidence and putting yourself out there. So where did you find the confidence to like cold message people or just to reach out, sans a relationship? Any tips on that?
Yeah, so again, with ADP lists, like these people literally put themselves up there and have their calendar open. So like there's no like, I need to approach this person. It's like they put up time so that you can meet them. So that was probably the easiest place to do it. And the truth of the matter is, even with a person like myself, like I'm excited to talk to someone that's trying to get into the industry. And I think that's why a lot of these people on ADP list are there too. And so they want to be there so that they can be valuable to your time. But obviously my big thing is when you're gonna message them or set up something with them, make sure their time is valuable by like preparing a lot of questions that you know that is going to be great. Obviously be interested in what company and what they're doing. And I think that they appreciate that. That's obviously like just how you genuinely create that relationship. So I think it was the confidence of like, I'm going to make sure they get something out of talking to me, but mostly that they feel valued when I'm talking to them because I genuinely want to learn what it's like to work in their realm.
Yeah.
And it's so many differences between everywhere you could work at. So it's almost necessary to like learn and pick people's brains for that.
Yeah. And I would just say to kind of expand on that answer, which that carries true for non-ADP, like for LinkedIn, say, or showing a genuine interest in the person, in the company, in their background, say it's similar to what yours was or whatever, creating that bond, even if it's like I'm reaching out to someone on LinkedIn because they're a former Designlab alum, immediate moment for connection, right? So it's making them a human and not just a number who can help you get, like your example of, hey, I'm applying for a job. I don't know you, but will you help? That's not the way. Find a way to connect.
Any other way other than there's a job opening at your job.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but would you give me a referral?
Great.
Yeah.
I did want to touch on, I don't know how related it is to that, but like to the imposter syndrome that you could have actually at work too, or like before you start working somewhere. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I would say that I'm not the kind of person that struggles with that because I feel so much like I'm a I told you so. Like I really love like telling people like, hey, this would be great to do it like this. Like our whole job as a UX person is to say, wouldn't it be better if we tried this, or what if we consider that? And you should always feel like you have value by being a person in the room that's going to bring in a fresh idea, like fresh eyes, fresh tools. Like those of you that are in Designlab right now are probably daily using Figma, if not like, I don't know, even Adobe and Sketch still, where there could be people that are, 20 years into their experience and haven't touched that at all. And then that's all of a sudden what the whole organization's using, and you're capable. You might have that level of experience to like help with that. I think in any room that I'm in, even with like product managers or developers, like a lot of the times if I'm the only UX designer, I know I have that that insight about what UX is, and you'd be surprised that even as a beginner how much that goes in a room where there isn't any. Like something as simple as like, oh, this isn't the right color contrast. Like they're not thinking of that. Like they need to know like what accessibility is. They need to know like what mental models exist or what patterns are happening. And I will tell you that the people that are in it on the daily basis, even experienced designers, are struggling or losing sight of that because they're so deep in the current work that they're not seeing, and they don't have enough time to see what's out there. So for you to come in with fresh eyes, it's helpful, it's value, and you should always be like happy that you're going to be able to bring that as a new person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we often, especially as boot camp like changers, right? Like career changers can feel like our experience is less than, or we don't know enough, or whatever. But everything you've learned in your life so far is valid experience. Like it's all valid. And we've got a lot of questions coming in about the recruiter. So I want to go back to that for a quick moment, because one of these questions was really interesting around like connecting with recruiters, but then maintaining that relationship. You've talked about sort of like that this relationship with your current recruiter has been long-term, but how do you go about maintaining that and staying in their realm and on like top of mind?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I think because when we did first form a relationship and she was so like good about actually valuing me as a person and like looking at me as like more than a number, like we would really like, talk about even personal stuff, that like practically a friend for the most part. And so I don't know how like what maintaining it would be with someone that was like strictly only connected with me by work is, but like she was basically a friend. Like we don't necessarily text on a constant basis, but like she even switched companies, and at this point was able to reach out and say like, hey, I'm at this new company. I know this other company that like might be interested in you.
Mhm.
They just still just thought of me. But I don't know necessarily that I would like keep reaching out with them after getting a job. That's definitely not my path. But I think overall, I think once you've connected with the recruiter, you would hope that like if I needed a job, if I was at the point where I was like, oh, I don't like where I'm at, which is not now, but if I was at that point, then I would you know, I would hope that my relationship was strong enough that I could reach out and they would see what they could do for me. So
Yeah. I feel like you kind of touched on it, but you said friend. It's like a friend, right? And I think that's sort of, I mean, that's what we want, right? Like feeling like a person is like someone you can show up for if they needed help. Like, hey, would you mind sharing this job out? Like, yeah, you could, or that you could seek them out, and it's treated like a professional or like a reciprocal relationship. And just to clarify, because somebody had a question, you connected with this person through ADP, right? Not LinkedIn.
the recruiter actually got that recruiter because of the ADP list job. The first job I picked up was at USAA. Their way of hiring on a contractor was by using recruiters to set you up as a contractor under that recruiting company. So in order to even get to work at USAA, the recruiter had to set me up. And so that's kind of how it worked. So some of them work as basically the contract company. And then after that point, they could pretty much, you know, still set me up with another contract if they needed to.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to change gears. We've got kind of a question here from Marie. They're trying to get an internship with a company and really want to apply for the deadline, but it's before they're finishing phase 2. So any advice that you'd have on approaching that if their phase 2 piece, you know, all that isn't done yet?
So phase 2, right? That's when they're finishing their portfolio. So like before finishing the portfolio, yeah, I think like I think I was in my first internship during phase 1. So I don't see why you would stop yourself from taking an opportunity if someone already thought you were worth, you know, taking on that opportunity. If they offer you that kind of thing, you know, kind of go through with it. The hard part is, I would say, if you really just generally didn't feel like you could make the time for it. I think people that are doing phase 2 in the full-time route, it seems like so much work in a short period of time. I almost always, and I don't know how Designlab always feels about this, but I almost always feel like it's better to be at part-time, because people that finish it at full-time rate finish early, struggle to get hired right away. If they do, then they end up spending the rest of the part-time amount of time touching up their portfolio anyway. That's just what I've seen. But I think in general, like if you can get it done quick and you're also like doing a great job doing it quickly, then that works for you. But I think most people, like, it helps like think it through and work on it more intently for a longer period of time, I think.
Yeah. And I think for an internship, right, the expectation isn't necessarily that you have a perfectly polished portfolio yet. You are still in school. So sharing out a case study, perhaps in a PDF or, you know, slide deck is fine than having this perfect portfolio with like all of these pieces in it. Right.
Yeah. I think with the apprenticeships that I have too, the beauty of it is because it's like free work for them. Like they really can't put a lot of pressures of like, hey, we need this at this time, or hey, like we need you to do this amount of work. Like I kind of get to set the guidelines of like, I think I'm going to work for 2 months on this, and this is what I want to deliver for you, and have that like mutual agreement. So there's like a better understanding of like what the time constraint and how much time I have an effort to put towards it. So it's not straining me against finishing the course.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have a question come in from Christian about the day-to-day. So I'm sure this varies job to job, but how much of your day is user research and prototyping versus creating designs?
Yeah, I realized I didn't even name what company I'm working at now, but I am at Optum Financial, which is a subset of United Health Group. And I feel like I'm lucky where, again, as a generalist for the most part, like I was hired on a team that's like everyone needs to be a full-on UX designer, because we're just not big enough to have UI specific, research specific. I would say that, like, because when you think of the design phases, I'm on a project that's needing a lot of research, then of course on a day-to-day, I'm probably doing like usability tests or user interviews. And then when we move further down, then I'm probably doing more prototyping. I'm sure you guys hear this a lot, but there's also a lot of regular meetings. And I wanted to talk on this because I heard on the last webinar that Robin said that like we're basically professional complainers. And I would argue that we are professional arguers. Like we are debating on a regular basis, like this has to happen on the design. Like we need to do this, we need to push back, or we need to take a step back and like look at things again. And you're constantly just kind of defending your design decisions or presenting to certain design decisions. And sometimes it's an argument because dev thinks it needs to be one way or product needs to be another way. But I think it's exciting. I actually think that on a day-to-day basis, like having to explain an idea out thoroughly and like provide research or like reasoning behind it is like such a fun muscle to exercise on a regular basis. But definitely don't do that with someone that like really, really hates getting their ideas challenged. Like I learned the hard way that you're gonna sometimes run into someone that like just does not want you to argue with them at all, and it's better to just walk away. But I think it's like it's part of the job to like really explain things to people multiple times and in different ways. And I think that's honestly a bigger part of the design than it is like making sure you have a lot of research or you can design super well. Because if you can't speak to it properly, then it doesn't matter how much research you did or how beautiful it is, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of think that goes into some of these, this question from Brian, you know, what resources do you have for writing case studies? And just generally like tips on creating those stories, because that's an opportunity to share that, right? Not verbally, but in a written format.
Yeah, I think this is so funny to hear because I am writing a case study on probably the biggest project that I have done in my career so far. And I've been telling people about it, like in the company of like, okay, on the team, I'm going to work on this. And I'm practically having to do it in 3 different versions. Like the first version is for the business stakeholders to see. The other version is for the team to use to show like, hey, this is what the team did. And then I want one version for myself of like on my portfolio. And it is already like so intimidating to me to work on it just as much as I'm sure doing it just for your portfolio is. And I still don't have a perfect grasp of it. I think writing case studies is really hard. I think everyone should know that what you're doing with a case study is hard. I feel like keeping it simple is better in terms of, I know people tell you all the time, like, have a lot of info, don't have it too long. But for me, the big thing is like you want someone to actually read it enough where they get what you're doing. So like keeping things simple where you are presenting the insights, presenting the ideas. One of the biggest tips and like simple tips I can tell you right now is like make your headlines scannable. I say this all the time to my group crits is like don't make your headlines say just user flows or just wireframing. Like say what was the insight when you did that section of it, because when I'm scanning it I want to get the general idea of what that project was by at least just reading the headlines. And it's a good practice to like write those out before you even put it on the website or on the page, so you can even just read like how's this storytelling coming out from just the headlines. But yeah, when I'm doing mine right now, I'm looking at other portfolios, looking at other case studies for inspiration, and I know the feeling of dread of like, God, that looks so much better. Like, how am I going to make it look like this? Like, I still get that now. And I love my portfolio and doing case studies to some degree because it feels really good when you're done. But I get that. Like, it's hard to do. And it's even more intimidating when you look at people who've done it great. But do your best to emulate that.
And where do you find some of these resources specifically? Are you looking like on Behance? Are you looking through like your LinkedIn connections? You know, where are you finding some of your favorite examples?
Yeah, I think the Wins channel on Designlab is a good one for, hey, these people came out of the program and they have a good portfolio and they got a job. And like, it's like the obvious, like, check. I want this as an example.
Yeah.
Best Folios is another good place because there are professional portfolios in there. But I think that there can be such a big difference between someone that's been in the game for a while and like they keep it short because obviously the name of what company they're doing it for like tells everything already. So it's hard to keep look at those as the specific and like only example. So I do recommend like Designlab's I Got a Job, or if you're not in Designlab and you're just listening in, bestfolios.com is still a good place to go.
I think that's something really valid to keep in mind, though. That's a great point of, looking at somebody who's maybe been in the field for a longer time, their portfolio is going to feel different. It is going to look different just by virtue of the fact that they have a different kind of experience and level of things to draw from. So I just want to highlight that for folks. Like, don't be too down on yourself if you're comparing your portfolio to somebody who's been doing this for 10 years, because somebody who has been doing it for 10 years has a different kind of network and different kind of just jobs that they've been in and different ways to pull on that.
Yeah, and they probably have a different looking portfolio, or maybe they are actually missing a lot of context that someone that's going to hire wants out of you. I think another good quote that I think of when it comes to applying to jobs is, just like anything, like, you're not trying to be the best UX designer out there. You don't have to be like as good as these like top-notch portfolios that you see on like the awards website. You just need to be better than the other people applying for the job. Like, just like in a race, you're not training to be like an Olympic athlete. You're training to be the best runner in that race. Like, you need to be better than the other people maybe applying for a 2 to 3 year job or a 2 to 3 year experience job,
Absolutely. And there is I genuinely believe, a role in a company for everybody. Not every portfolio is the right fit for every company. Not every person is the right fit for every company, and vice versa, company for person. So it's okay. You're 100% right. So, couple like little technical questions over here. I'm going to go for this one that's gotten an upvote. Do you think it's necessary to know Adobe, Sketch, and Figma? Some companies specify, some don't. So you've mentioned like tool sets and learning and training. So talk to us about that.
I think so. I have experience in all three now, and I feel like they're very interchangeable. I think if you had the skill set to learn one, you should be able to transfer and like learn the other if that ends up being what the company is using. It's just like kind of different words for things, kind of different placements on the file. But like, I would hope that if you're a UX designer, you have the initiative to figure something out of how it works. So I don't think it matters to like learn all three at once. But if you come to the job, you probably might need to learn one over the other depending on what they have. And there's resources out there obviously to learn any of them. I think Adobe with their Behance challenges is great. I think Figma has a ton of YouTubers, or Figma Academy, and like there's different places to learn that too. So hopefully you get at least pretty proficient with one, and hope that that is the one at your job if you're doing UI design. But it just depends, really.
I think that kind of brings back to our initial sort of where we let off, right? The overcoming imposter syndrome. So do you feel like with these tools or learning with these, challenging yourself to do some of the Behance, things versus doing Figma things as a way to combat imposter syndrome as they're applying for a job that may specify, oh, we're looking for Adobe, or, oh, we're looking for Sketch? Like, is that...
I felt like, so even doing the challenges, I feel like gave me the confidence that like, if I need to learn something on spot, I can. And I think that that's the important thing too, is to be able to know that like, I have this ability to like learn something and try to do something quickly. Like maybe like maybe you're not the quickest at UI, but like in general, if you're knowing, hey, I can seek out something if I need to, because any job you're going to have to do that. A lot of people learn what to do in their job at the job. But so I think that just making yourself open to like, I need to learn this and hopefully I can quickly apply it because I'm going to just put in that work to do it. Because the truth of the matter is, even if you are, again, not the best at UX, but you do get hired on, like you're probably still putting more effort at it than the product designer, or the product manager or the developer is at learning those things. So you're still going to have a voice on something that they might not even have any idea about. And even like, again, the super experienced designers might not have an idea about something that you just recently learned. Like I'll give you an exact example is on our team, and I will shout out, my manager is really great about having hired a lot of junior designers. Love her for that. It's really rare, I think, for someone to be that much of an advocate for it. And we were lucky enough to get this job even as early designers. Like there's like the team of us, And one of our most recent hires brought in, she just did a research course before joining. And with that research course, she knew this tool called Dovetail. And so her even just introducing that new fresh tool outside of, what I probably learned in my own in Designlab, or any of us really knew, even having some experience outside of her, she was able to just show us something new. And so anything like that you can find. So I feel like as long as you're a big like sponge of what's going on in UX, by the time you get hired, you're going to have something that's going to make that team or that project better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really kind of like looking at the time, really lovely sort of like sentiment to kind of like wrap and end on. And hopefully really drive home for the folks who are hearing this call, which is you do bring value and like you can learn, and that can really help. And I'm just kind of trying to emulate back what you've already shared with us, Joyce, that turning on that learning muscle can really help you and feel better and confident in your search, right?
Yeah, I think if they hire you on to be a UX designer, they're hiring you on because they want to know what you think. So just show them what you got.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering if there's any other things that we haven't been able to touch on or that you wanted to bring to this conversation today that really drive home these ideas around networking and imposter syndrome in this field.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, I mean, I really love being in this job. I think one of the cool things that I didn't bring up is that coming into this, I feel like I have a graphic design experience, but I don't consider myself like an artist. Like I can't draw at all. Like I'm the kind of person that had loved the ones where you did a grid and then you would just copy what's on the grid. And so like what's cool about UX is like you don't have to be amazing at visual design, because you actually benefit from copying a little bit what's out there, because people are used to it. People know what to do with it. And so if you feel like UI isn't your strong point, like know that they're like emulating and copying what's out there, understanding what's out there that works is going to be your strong point, and do good at that. Because I'm grateful that this is kind of a graphic design position, but you don't have to be like overly creative. It's kind of bad too, because then dev can't really build those things, or it's difficult for them, or it's just not reasonable. I'm one thing I didn't even mention is that I recommend, like, when you're in Designlab, to get your mentor, maybe mentors if you had multiple like me, your group crit facilitator to write you like a recommendation on LinkedIn. I feel like that really helped with my confidence too, to know that somebody else already vouched for me. And yeah, my mentor called me a pragmatic designer. That's like a big brain word, but I looked it up and it means something that's like really realistic and down to earth when you're trying to design something. And I think that that's cool that this is design, but you have to be like smart and realistic about it. You don't have to be like an amazing visual designer about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is coming from, I want to remind people, from somebody who does a lot of the UI and enjoys a lot of UI pieces, yeah. Right? The part we would deem more of the like graphics and I hate to throw out the word creative, but that visual element side of things, right? And Alice in the question sort of asked that, question around, is there a good amount of design knowledge that can be taught, or is it pure instinct, and how much does it help? And what I'm hearing, actually, I don't want to summarize what I'm hearing. What would you say to that?
So from that, I think it helps, obviously, if you do have a designer like experience enough. Like I do think that like coming up with something that's like, okay, I know I need to make this centered, and all those things that are kind of basic when it comes to design foundations, that literally is taught in UX design foundations first before you go into the UX academy. It helps if that is like second nature to you. But if it's not, like as long as you kind of learned it and you can speak to it, then you're fine. And I think that we're lucky we're in this field. UI design is, again, kind of the part that should be the quickest once all the other work is done. So they really need more people on the side that's not just the UI. Like I know on our team, we all kind of like doing it and we have the ability to put it together, but we actually need more people that are willing to do the research, or more people that are willing to sit and do the wire flows, because the design part's pretty easy to just make sure things are in the right place once you have design systems and things like that to lean on for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Joyce, for coming. Thank you for sharing all of these insights. Do you want to throw that slide up really quick one more
Oh,
time?
yeah.
So if anybody didn't have a chance to grab it, they can grab those resources off it. This webinar has been recorded. It will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So if you're not, subscribe over there. For those who have attended, or if you registered and you're watching this after the fact, it does get emailed out to everybody who signed up. So thank you again. And don't forget to follow us on our Instagram and our Twitter. They're just at Designlab for Instagram and at Try Designlab for Twitter. So you can keep up on our events and such. I know Emily H is also really good about posting those in Discord. If you are with us as a student, please make sure you are in Discord and joining in the chats. But and if you're in UXA, sign up for a session with Joyce.
I'm in kids right now. I took a break for this fall.
Okay.
When I'm back, I hope that I meet more of you. But in general, it's really fun being a facilitator. And I'm glad that I've been able to be on this Designlab team in the way that I have. And shout out to Emily, even though she's not here. She's made my experience as a student and as a facilitator really easy and a great experience. So. But also super great to talk with you, Jessica.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to have been here, and we're super glad that you were able to share your experience as a Designlab alum, and love that you've come back to be a facilitator and share with the students. Y'all see where you can connect with Joyce over there. And thank you again. We really appreciate your questions. And if there was anything that we didn't get the chance to ask, please feel free to reach out to me. Joyce, you're, I'm sure, okay with folks reaching out to you as well to ask those specific questions if we didn't get a chance to get to them. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Yeah.